Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this first in a series of webinars focused on sharing information related to document and data conversion within the realm of law enforcement. Appreciate you carving out some of your time today, and I hope you are all having a great day so far and in good health. During the presentation, we'll be sharing information about best practices regarding the digitization of microfilm-based case file and criminal records that would contain criminal justice information, or CGI. My name is Jim Dietrich. I'm an account executive here at BMI Imaging. My career within the information management industry in general actually dates back to the time when various microforms were being created to miniaturize and better manage records. And so I've been in the industry for quite a while and have a lot of background or experience within the realm of microfilm creation. I'm currently focused on the law enforcement marketplace, if you will, or arena. Before we get going, just want to let you know that all attendees have been muted, so I won't be able to hear any comments or questions you may have during the presentation. That said, you can submit any questions you may have using the question area or section of the GoToWebinar panel. So you should find that section. You may have to click the down arrow to expand it so that you can submit a question, and I welcome any that you might have. Before we get going, I also want to let you know that there's a data sheet that's attached. So there's a handout section of the GoToWebinar panel, and if you expand that, you'll see that we have a data sheet related to BMI and law enforcement specifically. So please, I encourage you to download that. It's got some details in it I won't really be addressing during the webinar today. So it would be great to pull down and have it for reference afterward. With that said, let's get going here. A bit about the agenda today. As we indicated in our communications, we don't expect to take much more than 20 minutes of your time. It's pretty consolidated. The first thing we're going to do is give you some background about BMI Imaging. Then we're going to discuss the challenges inherent to the digitizing of microform collections in general. Microforms, by the way, is kind of a generic term, and it encompasses microfilm, microfiche, and other microfilm formats that you may have been exposed to. But what we find is most of our clients are really dealing with microfilm reels and microfiche, and specifically with criminal or case records that have been reduced or archived on those formats. We'll also be talking about keeping your criminal justice information or CGI data secure. Then we'll move on to looking at the options, a couple of them that you have when choosing direction forward with a digitization project. We'll move on to a demonstration, a quick overview demo of Digital Reel, which is a solution that BMI has been offering for over 10 years now. Then we'll have a Q&A session, as I mentioned. I'll address any questions you might have, and then talk a little bit about next steps. About BMI, we were founded way back in 1958, so we've been in the business of providing information management solutions to all types of clients, agencies, government agencies, and commercial clients for a long time, over 60 years. Initially, again, it was all about creating various microfilm formats, and then we were one of the first to transition from that type of analog preservation method into digital imaging. And we offered both side by side for a number of years, and now it essentially has boiled down into primarily paper scanning, microfilm scanning, and then migration of data from those those formats and other systems as well. We refer that as data conversion types of services. But today we'll be focusing on the digitizing of microforms. We offer both a traditional type of solution for that. We'll go into some detail about what we mean by traditional, and as I indicated, digital real, which is a BMI specific option with some fantastic advantages or benefits over the traditional type of conversion. Our facilities are secure, as you would imagine. We do a lot of conversion work for law enforcement agencies and courts where we're dealing with CGI data. So our security is up to par with both cjis security policy guidelines and requirements, as well as HIPAA. We do a lot of healthcare record scanning and data capture with records that are from healthcare organizations. So we're HIPAA and cjis compliant. We have clients of all sizes and from across the country. So we have been in business for 60 years, as you could imagine. We have a lengthy list of clients, and with regard to microform digitization, it's pretty easy to consider that as a national type of offering, because it's relatively easy to ship all kinds of microfilm, even in high quantities, to our facilities for processing. Lastly, I just want to quick note about a law enforcement records management conference that's coming up in Nashville in July. I don't know if you're familiar with LERM, L-E-R-M, but we'll be exhibiting in July on the 15th at the 2020 LERM conference, again in Nashville. So if you are able to attend, we'd love to see you there. Microfilm formats in general, or microform formats, microfilm of which is one. There are a number of them, and this graphic that I've got here on this slide basically presents the key formats, ranging from various microfiche formats. Here on the top row, we have 16 millimeter microfiche, jacketed 16 millimeter microfiche, very common, and what a lot of you are probably accustomed to using for managing case records if you're not on microfilm. Combination microfiche COM, and then there's a couple of different reel formats on the bottom row. So we're aware that you may have a combination of these. You may not be ultimately familiar with the nomenclature around them, but we can help you navigate through them. In general, today, we're talking about the conversion of microfilm and microfiche, not 35 millimeter slides or aperture cards as you see there in the graphic. Few key challenges associated with the digitization process. And there are others, but these are really the key ones that we run into over and over again. Image quality is a significant one, because the collections, whether they're film or fiche, are typically in place, have been in place for decades. So they may date back into the 50s, 60s, 70s, and that film may not have been created to high quality specification, and may have other quality related issues just related to the documents. So image quality, conversion cost, which is usually a factor of volume, and ultimately whether your intention is to index the records, case files, reports, whatever they may be, at the document level or at page level perhaps, or you opt for a more simplistic approach, which would be at the roll or fiche level. Assuring completeness is the other challenge in a digitization project. We like to refer to that as capture assurance. It's basically assuring that we capture, or that all the images on the roll, you can also think of them as frames, are captured. And that is a concern sometimes, because some of the fiche scanners that are in use out there, they may skip images. There could be issues or glitches in the conversion process, which would compromise the completeness or accuracy of the capture process. So it's always a concern, and we address that in different ways. Just to delve a little bit into the quality then for images that are coming off your microforms, the inherent issues tend to be poor originals. The originals may have been faded or torn. Perhaps a document wasn't even complete at the time that it was recorded. So just the original records themselves were compromised in some way. Next is that the microfilming work may have been done poorly or improperly. And that can mean a few different things. Either the camera was not in focus, there were some density variations or darkness and lightness issues that weren't handled properly, but there are a number of things that can affect the microfilming process itself. In scanning the film, what we find is collections that have been around for a while and are in great use can have scratches on the film or fiche. There's also a syndrome referred to as vinegar syndrome, which isn't too common, but it's a chemical degradation of the film over time, and that can happen if it's not processed properly. If there are residual chemicals left on the film and they are dried on there, it will continue to process over time. And the way you know you have the vinegar syndrome is if you open a drawer that contains film or fiche and you get a whiff of vinegar. That's what's happening. In the images at the bottom of this slide, you could see, hopefully, that we've kind of outlined a couple of them. So you could see how you can run into variations in density or contrast across a fiche where some of the images may have been dark pieces of paper, backgrounds that were captured, and those can present some challenges in getting quality that is acceptable across the entire range of pages. This little clip of a reel, a 35mm reel over on the right, just shows scratching. So this is what can happen, and probably what you've been dealing with on your end when you go to view and print these records. Cost, again, is largely related to the volume of your collection and to the indexing specifications that you put in place. A typical roll of microfilm, typical being 100-foot, what we call standard microfilm roll, is it will hold about 2,500 frames or images. A typical microfiche, and I mentioned microfiche jackets as being a format, that's probably the most common format, will hold up to 60 frames or images, 5 rows and about 12 images in each row. If we use an average of about 10 images per report, which may be a bit high, but just for the purposes of this discussion, each roll or microfiche would contain about 250 or 6 reports respectively. So it gives you a sense of the amount of indexing that may need to be done at those levels. Each image has to be reviewed in order to capture the report metadata that you're after. That can be just the case or report number, or there may be additional information that you want to extract after the digitization process is done and we're moving through the indexing process. That data has to be hand keyed onshore at the facility, a cjis compliant facility. And so it is all done onshore to be compliant, again, with the cjis security policy. Keeping your CGI data secure. What does cjis mean for you and your criminal justice information or CGI records? Well, the cjis security policy is a key component of this, because if you're maintaining or wanting to maintain access to the cjis database in your crime fighting efforts, it's going to be necessary to be cjis compliant on your end. So there are considerations on the agency side of the equation and then on ours as well, of course. But if you intend to maintain your access to that database, you'll need to make sure you're following the cjis security policy. You're subject in that scenario to audits by the FBI or state DOJ. They're always a possibility. So they'll be ensuring that you've got the policy guidelines are being followed. On our side, the production staff has to be thoroughly trained to conform to the cjis security policy. So we have biannual certification that we complete. All of our employees have had background checks completed, and they go through cjis certification. Again, every 2 years, they have to be at a cjis security level 4. The facilities, the network and physical aspects of security around our facilities have to be in compliance with the security policy from cjis as well. So we have procedures in place to ensure that's the case. There's a lot of detail obviously behind that, but you can rest assured that we are cjis compliant and we are a cjis listed vendor. Secondly, around CGI data, it's important to choose a vendor for your project that is best qualified. And I think from a standpoint of security, which is probably your greatest concern, it's important to select a vendor that is at least cjis compliant, ideally cjis listed, so that you know that they're serious about the security aspects of your data and the project. Secondly, it's key to find a vendor that's using state-of-the-art hardware and software and components that are designed specifically for high volume and high quality scanning or digitization. There are a myriad of products out there that digitize records, but they aren't all of the same ilk with regard to quality and volume. So that is a key consideration. And lastly, that the vendor has experienced production and project management staff so that they have qualified people in place to ensure the project is done right and on time. So that's a key consideration. Your options for moving forward. So I mentioned that there are a couple from a high level, a couple of options. We refer to one of them as a traditional conversion with traditional data deliverables. That's a bit generic, I understand, but what it means is that in most cases we're digitizing the film or fiche in bitonal or grayscale, one or the other, depending upon the quality and the client's ability to manage the data. Grayscale scans are considerably larger in size than bitonal. We take the digitized images, we index them at the document or page level, typically for these traditional conversions. That could be at the report level, is what you might expect. Rarely for these types of records is it necessary to index at the actual page level. We format the deliverables from the process of scanning and indexing for delivery, and that formatting can mean a couple of things. We have the ability to output really any type of file type that the client is requesting. That's typically going to be TIFF files, PDF files. It's possible to deliver JPEG as well, although it's far less common. It's usually TIFF or PDF, and that we deliver, in addition to the images, a load file of some kind. And what I mean by that is a file that contains information about the documents, their index values. Again, that may just be the report number, and then the image file that was created for that report number. And we deliver that usually one of two ways to ensure security. SFTP or secure FTP is an internet-based type of delivery model, which is very common. We also deliver on encrypted drive, which is a very secure method as well. The access to those records, once they're digitized and delivered, is typically going to be one of two ways. It's going to happen over a shared network drive where you might place PDF files in a network drive in a nested folder structure and retrieve them that way. or it might be in an electronic document management system that the client has in place, or an EDMS. It also might be in a records management system or RMS environment that you have in place. It's certainly possible to load content, digital content, to most of those systems. So there are a lot of ways that these are accessed once the data has been delivered. The other solution that we offer is called Digital Reel, and Digital Reel is actually the name of a software platform for archiving and retrieval of records. It's a very mature product. It's been around over 10 years. It was introduced well over 10 years ago, so it's mature. We're running currently in version 6, I believe it's 6.7. It's secure. The data is protected in a number of different ways. As a CJIS compliant vendor, we actually store documents in a CJIS storage environment where we don't commingle records. They're specifically or only going to be law enforcement related, court records or police reports, and they're stored encrypted within that environment. They're also encrypted during transmission. There's an algorithm that's called TLS, and that's how the data is transmitted between the server and your workstation. And we have a couple of other methods of securing, which I'll just touch on quickly. We have IP address locking or IP restriction type of capabilities. So we can limit the access to the data that is stored in the Digital Reel platform to specific PCs or ranges of PCs at your location. And lastly, 2FA, which stands for two-factor authentication. Many of you are probably familiar with that in working with your bank or other financial institutions. It's becoming more and more common as a way to authenticate users that are logging in and make sure they are who they say they are. Within Digital Reel, we do pixel for pixel digitization in both black and white and grayscale. So that's a big difference between your more traditional type of conversion where you scan in one or the other. We capture all content in both formats. And what we mean by pixel for pixel is that we're capturing actually the entire length of the roll of film and preserving it in high fidelity compared to its original format. So you'll see this when we present the overview demo. Typically within Digital Reel, we're doing indexing at the roll or microfiche level and not at the report level. Not that that is something that can't be done. It certainly can be, but there are features in Digital Reel that make it possible for us to keep the indexing at a higher level, reduce the cost of the project, and that is it's a key consideration again for most of our clients that are evaluating this type of conversion project. All the images are passed through an optical character recognition or OCR process where we extract all the readable text, machine text from each page, and we make it available for global text searching. So this would be like a Google type search that many of you are probably familiar with from using your web browsers or searchable PDFs, for example. We have the ability to do on-the-fly grayscale image enhancement. And the reason for doing that is you may find documents, old documents coming off film that are difficult to read. It's very common. So we have the ability in Digital Reel to look at the grayscale version and actually make adjustments to the quality of that to maximize legibility. And lastly, we offer both cloud-based, BMI hosted, and on-premise implementation options. So we could do either way. If you have a preference for maintaining all of the content within your environment, your intranet, we can certainly do it that way. Most of our clients are comfortable with hosting it in our environment and that cloud-based model, but we can do either. I'm going to present now just a brief overview demo of Digital Reel. Won't go into depth in any particular feature or function, but just want to give you a high-level overview so that you have something to take away today, and then we can circle back with you to do something in more detail. I'm going to bounce over to the web here. I'm using Google to connect, or Google Chrome, to connect to our sample server. So I am connecting over the internet here. I'm logging in with my designated username and password. So first level of authentication here into the system. And I'm going to be looking at a data set or repository that was created specifically for police records, for demoing these types of records. We have dummy data in here. There are no live reports, of course, but this will give you some sense of how the product works. Let me just make a couple of quick adjustments in my screen here. So just giving you a quick lay of the land, we are within a repository that's called the Police Department Sample. You can have one or more repositories. We have this full text search feature here. So this is your global search across a portion of your repository or a specific role or fiche. It's context sensitive. We organize records by document or record type. And in this case, we have a couple of high-level links here. One is for microfiche and one is for microfilm. There could be more. We have an upload document capability in the upper right hand corner. You can see I'm hovering over upload documents. So for ad hoc capture or uploading of records, we do support that. I'm going to click on the incident reports microfilm repository. We usually organize the records by year. Got just a couple of years listed here. So 1970, I can open 1970 to look at any of the microfilm rolls that were created for records in that report range. And you could see this is the label of the roll essentially. It's got the report range identified. And if I'm looking for a particular report on that roll, I simply click on that link to open it. It's presenting the first page of the roll. And there's a toolbar in the upper right for performing image, I'll call it image specific functionality. Over on the right, we have navigation that's organized vertically to take you up and down through the collection very quickly. This is your Google search from within this pane. And we're looking at the first image here of 3200. For this roll, as it's indicated in the top center there. And then I can move to a view of the reel rather than one that is specific to an image on the reel. And I do that by just selecting view reel. And you could see here we actually have an image, a digital reel that has been archived. You can see the top and the bottom of that reel. And this is where you will get a high level of confidence regarding the capture assurance side of the equation. And we mentioned that as one of the greatest challenges. Well, here you could see the reel and you can scan the reel. And I'm just going to click on the right button. And you can see we can move through a reel of film in its digital format very quickly. And we can select a particular frame by just clicking on that and bring it into focus. This is the black and white view. I'm clicking on the Enhance button on the toolbar to bring the grayscale view forward, which will enhance many areas of the image. You could see the stamp area, which was faint in the black and white. This is all quite readable. So this gives you, or should give you a very good comfort level that you'll be able to read documents that you might not be able to currently on a microfilm reader printer that is probably in use. We have on-the-fly adjustments that we can make here. I can lighten or darken. We can pull records out of the system. So you can download in a variety of formats, standard formats, so PDF, TIFF, JPEG, whatnot. Printing capabilities if you really want to go back to paper. And then lastly, some annotation tools. We can redact content, add post-it notes, highlight areas of a document. So these are referred to as annotations, and they are optional and they do not affect the underlying archived, preserved report. They are just intended to replace all those things that we do in the paper world. So you will not impact the the archived copy in any way. The last thing I want to do here just quickly is give you a sense of what the full text search feature or global search, how it works. I'm just going to type in here a location. I happen to know San Diego is a city that occurs and reoccurs over the collection of film here quite often. So we have a number of hits that have come back, 1,000 in all. So it's a very common term within this particular role, of course, but you could see a link to each of these, some information about the context of the word or phrase that you searched upon. So this could be a case number, it could be a victim name. So it gives you this ability to take a deeper dive into a role or digital reel looking for specific words or phrases. I'll go ahead and click on the first one. You'll see it went directly to that page. It's taking just a second to pop up and it'll highlight all of the occurrences. So that is digital reel from a very high level. And again, we can provide you with a more customized, more detailed demo when you're ready. I'll bounce back now to the presentation and we'll move forward. This is a Q&A period. So I'm going to take a look and see if we have any questions that have come in during the presentation. Looks like we have a couple, so I'll take those and then we'll conclude. The first one relates to the project duration. What does a typical project take from a timeline standpoint? And that's difficult to answer without having more detailed information regarding the requirements for the project. And those requirements would relate to your volume, what type of formats you have. So are we digitizing 10,000 rolls or 100? And also to the requirements for delivery. So we'd mentioned two approaches. One is the traditional type of conversion. So we would need to gather some information through a discovery process about what your requirements are for indexing and delivery. And then the same would be true for the digital reel type of solution. Ultimately, though, once we have all those requirements documented, we are in good position to establish a timeline, and we have a very strict methodology that we employ for all of our projects. They all begin with a milestone 1 or M1 data sample. That's a proof of concept phase that we kick off every project with. And so that would be part of that timeline. It's just establishing that we are creating and delivering data in the way that you need it to be, and then we move into full production. So we will address these on an individual basis with you, but suffice to say, a typical project probably is about 3 or 4 months. Another question related to obtaining further details about cjis. We do have a very robust website, lots of content on there. We have a blog that's in place there, and there is an excellent article related to cjis and document management specifically. So it goes into more detail than I have today. We also have a lot of information on the site that will help us to size your collection, determine what you have. So there's a lot of good information. I suggest that as a good next step for you is to visit our website. Again, I encourage you to download the white paper here. Moving along. Next steps. So I think the website is certainly a great next step for you if you need to obtain some additional information and you'd like to do that via a website prior to reaching out to us or us reaching out to you. So that you could do today, obviously. Beyond that, we'll be reaching out to help you define everything related to a project, the volume, your requirements, timeline, and that will put us in position to provide a detailed cost proposal. So we will come as close as we can in terms of estimating the overall project cost and timeline. And the last thing I want to mention regarding next steps is that we are open to digitizing any sample rolls, or I should say sample rolls or microfiche for you at no charge. We do this for clients on an ongoing regular basis, and we can create a secure data set for you to be able to access them within Digital Reel, so we can both get a much better sense of what it is that you're working with and what it will look like in Digital Reel. That concludes today's webinar. You'll find my contact information up here, and as I indicated, we'll be circling back with you. But this is my contact information. It's also on the data sheet, and so if you pull that down, you'll have it there as well. Again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, and look forward to connecting with you.